Hi, everyone. I am John Hodorovich. Welcome to the Crawford Lorenzo Home Selling Team Buyers Seminar. We're here at the Keller Williams Metropolitan Office, 44 Whippany Road in Morristown. This time around for us buyers, we talk home inspections, and I am here with Larry McEntee of, Larry, I want to get this right because you said corporate for you is very big on this, HomeTeam Home Inspection Service.
HomeTeam Inspection Service.
HomeTeam Inspection Services. It's actually right on his shirt, and I still couldn't read it. Anyway, I have worked with Larry on several deals already, and he has been absolutely phenomenal. We have used him for quite often. So, Larry, just first off, how important, what is your role for a home inspector as for the buyers? What is your purpose in this part of the transaction?
Well, we have a bunch of sayings, and I think the most important one is we try to bring comfort to the buyer to close.
Okay.
Because basically by now they've fallen in love with the house, they've put a bid in, and they've competed for the house, they've won the house, and now the only thing stands between closing and us is a couple of things. It's the appraisal and us. And basically we're tasked with inspecting the house unemotionally and giving them the report back. Some people think an inspection, sir, is designed for negotiation, and well, it's used for that many times. It's not the real function of it. The real function is to educate the buyer on the house. We don't judge houses; we report on them. Okay. So the things we report on are either there or they're not. But that's what we should be doing, in a sense, to give comfort.
Yeah, so I've worked with Larry on both sides. I've been the buyer's agent, I've been the listing agent. When the buyer's agent said you were the one inspecting the house, I was like, whew, we're good, because one of the last home inspector that came in did the inspection and said, this is going to cost this much, this is going to cost this much, and this is going to cost this much. So in total, it's going to cost X. And they scared the buyers. Sure.
We're not supposed to give prices. I mean, because we're not contractors.
Could you say that louder?
We're not supposed to give prices. I mean, we can give ballparks. If somebody says, how much is a furnace? I'd say $5. But it's going to vary, because even in furnace, let me explain, a furnace could cost you $3,000 or cost you $8,000. Which one do you want? I mean, and prices since COVID are all over the maps. Contractors are getting higher prices. Electricians are getting higher prices. Plumbers are getting higher prices. Material costs of it has doubled. In the construction business, I mean, a sheet of plywood is double what it was. So it's very difficult for a home inspector to put a price on it. Now, a lot of home inspectors might have been contractors, but a lot of us have never been a contractor. Okay. So it's very difficult to do that. Our job is to identify it and then also to refer you to a source that can give you those prices. Okay. I tell people, you have an electrical problem, I'm going to refer you to a licensed electrician. Because by law, if I don't do that, I'm doing you a disservice. Because the only person that can tell you how much the panel is going to cost or why it should be replaced is a licensed electrician. I can identify things with it, but I can't tell you how to fix it. And if I did and you got hurt, the judge would throw the book at me.
Yeah, exactly. And Larry, kind of going back a little bit here, how long have you been doing this?
7 years now.
7 years, okay.
But I have a background. I mean, I spent 10 years on the Board of Ed where I managed $93 million worth of construction and actually inspected a lot of that. Okay. So I come from a background of that, but I come out of the technology business and 30 years of doing that. But so it's a little crazy. And I had a little bit of business building emergency vehicles for the government after 9/11. So inspection, you're taught that, and don't let anybody fool you. We all have to go to the same school, and we have to go to the continuing ed school, and we're trained to spot things that you might not see. I mean, I do 500 inspections a year. I know where we're going to find moisture, if it's there. I mean, we're going to try to find it. But again, it's a visual inspection. Okay. And I don't want to harp on that, but don't forget, we can't, it's not like Mike Holmes on TV. We can't go in the house and rip sheetrock off the wall or take people's closets and empty them. It's a visual inspection at the time of the inspection.
Yeah, because if someone's in a basement and there's a bunch of stuff, you're not moving all that stuff.
If I get hurt or I break something, I'd be liable for it.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. Now, I know here in the state of New Jersey, home inspectors are supposed to be, and I'm kind of diving into the electrical a little more specifically here. I know you guys are supposed to remove the cover of the panel. Why?
Well, there's a few things we can take apart. The panel cover, the furnace door. Okay. That's about it, really. We can't take anything else apart. We take the cover off because we're going to look at the circuits and the wiring to make sure it's not overloaded. One time I opened a box and all the wires were melting and they were hot. And actually, that caused us to call the owners right then and there.
Okay.
And they had a licensed electrician on site before we left because that was a fire hazard.
Yeah.
I mean, so we're looking in the panel to see about overload and how the wiring is done. You can tell a lot whether somebody's done a lot of their own wiring or if the electrician did it. If you open it up and it's all neat and all at right angle and it's in there right and the wires are right, then you got a pretty good idea. But that doesn't tell you everything. But we're looking at load and size of wiring, and if there's any overload or was overload, because sometimes you open the box and it's all corroded because there's water getting into the panel. Okay. So that's why we take the panel off, is to look at the components. But again, it's sort of like going to your doctor. I open your thing, and if you go to your doctor and he listens to your heart and hears a murmur, what's he going to do? He's going to send you to a cardiologist.
Right. I'm
going to send you to a licensed electrician.
Okay.
You can tell me, what do I do about it? Well, I don't know. Maybe you have to replace the box. Maybe you don't. But I'm going to send you to a professional.
Okay. So there is generally 4 pieces to an inspection, right? There's the general home inspection. There's the wood destroying insect inspection. There's the radon inspection. And then there's the tank sweep.
The ultimate tank sweep, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, the home inspection is set very strictly by the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
The standards and practices, if anybody wants to look them up under state of New Jersey standards and practice home inspection, there's 42 pages of description of what we should be doing and what we should be looking at. Okay. There's 4 criteria. Basically, they want us to look for the ability of the house, the safety of the house, the value of the house, and I forget the 4th one. It has to do with value. But again, if you're inspecting a $1 million house and there's a problem with a $3,000 air conditioner, is that big? Probably not in the scheme of things.
No.
So we're looking for things like that. That's why when people sign that contract that says, oh, it's only safety, environmental, or structural. Yep. 95% of what a home inspector is looking at should fall into one of those categories. Okay. So, unless I tell you there's a scuff on the kitchen floor, which I will do if there's a big enough scuff, but that doesn't fall into one of those categories. But most of the things I'm looking at would fall into one of those big categories. But so the home inspection is one thing, and that's what all home inspections should be doing. Relatively the same inspection. Now, how they write it up and how they present it to you is the difference. Okay. So that's where you have guys you like and guys you don't like, or guys you trust and guys that will listen to you. And so, you have that. But then the radon test is a lab test. We're going to leave a can or a device in the house for 2 or 3 days. We're going to pick it up and it's going to record the radon in the house.
And it's simply a little charcoal can.
There's 2 charcoal cans now because 2 years ago the state mandated 2 tests on every real estate transaction. Okay. And they did that because sometimes if it's a high, they want a second test to confirm it. Okay. And in a transaction, when you got a 10-day window, it becomes a problem. So they want 2 tests. And I've never had 2 cans out of more than 1/10 of a point apart from each other. And it tells you that. And at 4.0, typically the state recommends that it be mitigated. Now, if it's 3.9 and you as a buyer, I'd probably tell you that you should get it mitigated too, because 3.9 is 1/10 away from 4.0. Right. But we also send information out about radon because I get the question all the time is, what's a safe level of radon? 0. Because it's radioactive gas. If you don't have to breathe it, don't breathe it. Yeah. But we all breathe it to some degree.
Well, the natural level is what, 0.8, 0.9?
0.7 or something like that, I think they said, but that's outside even. Okay. But it can, and it doesn't, people think, oh my God, it's building up in the house. Well, radon has a half-life of 30 minutes. It starts dying right away. So it doesn't hang out in the house. It plates out, it sticks to walls, furniture, carpeting. So you don't have to worry about it. That's why when they put a system in, they can test it within 48 hours. Okay. Because the radon is constantly changing. It doesn't build up like the house has been vacant for 6 months. People think the radon is going to be high. Well, not necessarily. So you guys recently did, as I mentioned, an inspection on one of my listings, and there's something that popped up in the yard, and it wasn't. Believe it or not, it was a tank, right? We thought it was a tank because it came back metal. It was a giant rock. Well, some rocks have a very high iron content, and the only way to test it is that either they usually drive a rod in and they can feel it, and if they hit it though about 18 inches down, then they can start thinking tank. Okay. But there's several ways to do a tank sweep, and we don't do our own. We farm out to a professional company because that way, if they miss one, they come back and they dig it out because they remove tanks for a living. But what they do is they do a magnometer test around the house. That's why it's important if you're doing a tank sweep, make sure the owners move their cars, their trailers, their pods. I mean, we've pulled up and there's a trailer and a pod in the driveway, and that's right where the tank would be.
Okay.
So they're doing a magnetic sweep, but then there's also the GPR. Like usually we do the metal.
Yeah.
And if we find something, then they come back with a GPR, which is a very expensive device that actually is a ground penetrating radar. It's like sonar for submarines. And they get the shape of the tank. And sometimes we're even fooled by that. And then they have to do a visual dig.
Okay.
Because not everybody's Superman. We can't see below the surface. And I hate when I'd rather have them say it's clean or they found a tank. When it's in between, it becomes a problem because it costs everybody money and time and effort and it causes them worry.
Yeah. Not going to lie. It
I
did.
can tell you what, I've had more than one customer find a tank and then dig it out and find out it's leaking. And the cleanup is several thousand. So then you're saying, thank God we found that then, because if you buy the house, you buy the liability.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, oh God,
the WDO is the only other thing. That's when people get confused. A lot of people call it termite.
Okay.
But it's wood destroying organisms.
Okay.
So it's carpenter ants, carpenter bees.
Okay.
It's not a pest inspection. People confuse it with, I have mice and you didn't tell me. Well, we're not looking for mice.
Yeah, you're looking for the wood destroying insects.
Because mice could be if they had mice and they vacuumed today and there's no signs of them, tomorrow they might have mice back and we couldn't see them.
Okay.
So it's very difficult. The rodents can come and go at their seasons and everything else. This is looking for things that are going to harm your structure of your house. Mainly termites, carpenter ants, carpenter bees. Carpenter bees leave little holes, but then the woodpeckers come and they open up big holes. So if you have long holes in your trim, that's a woodpecker that's going after that bee because they like to eat the big carpenter bees. So that's a wood. And then in older houses that are 100 years old or older, we look for powder post beetles.
Okay.
Before wood was kiln dried, and at the temperatures it killed all the bugs in it.
Right.
They used to use lumber that had beetles already in it, and they would eat the wood over years.
Now, obviously, you just mentioned the older houses. We have a lot of older houses here in New Jersey, and sometimes you may find that cloth wiring in there.
Yeah.
Is that
in
still,
Morristown? We still find active knob and tube wiring with cloth shielding.
Okay.
And it's not a death sentence. A lot of insurance companies don't like it. But if the house has been standing for 200 years running, you can't say that it's wrong, but it should be looked at. And that's where you need an electrician that knows what knob and tube wiring is. Because a lot of the new electricians don't have experience with it.
Okay.
And it has to be handled a special way.
Okay.
And I also tell people, if we find it and it's been removed, and you're doing renovation in the house and you find a piece of it in the wall, don't assume it's not live, because sometimes, you'll find a lot in Morristown with some of these houses that have these beautiful, vaulted ceilings in the hallway. They don't want to rip it down to get the wiring out, so they leave the one piece that could go in the chandelier as a knob and tube or something, or it's left and they didn't know it was there. So always assume it's live, because you don't want to find out it's not. And you can't add wiring to it like you do like copper. I mean, you can't just splice into it and put it in a junction box. You have to know what you're doing.
Now, for the most part, copper is the new code. It's the way to go now here in the 21st century. But I'm starting. Aluminum is there's still, you can still use aluminum connections. No.
Well, the large core wire is all aluminum, almost because of cost. I mean, the wire that comes into your house, very few power companies use copper. They use aluminum.
It's too expensive.
Yeah, it's too expensive for the large core. It's a lot, and it's also people who steal copper pipes, they steal copper wirings. If you had, two gauge copper wire coming into your house, it's a temptation there to rip it out. But what you'll find in aluminum wiring is it's not the aluminum wiring that's the problem. It's how it's dealt with, because it was used mostly in the 60s and 70s, and we were told, now I don't know if this is true, but it was because there was a copper shortage because of Vietnam. They were using a lot of the copper, and copper prices were extraordinary, so they went to aluminum. And solid core aluminum, the problem is it expands at a different rate than the copper.
Okay.
And when they're tied together, if they're not tied together correctly, they expand, contract, expand, contract, expand, contract, and finally there's a little gap between the copper and the aluminum, and then it starts arcing. And when it arcs, it overheats and can cause a fire.
Okay.
So it's how it's dealt with. And the way to fix it, some inspectors, my father's house, the electrician came in and he put a leader on every outlet. He took the aluminum wire out, cut it back a couple inches, put a copper wire on, joined it professionally with special tags and special wire nuts, and then left the copper on the end. Because then now you're dealing with copper. So it's not so much the aluminum, it's how it's dealt with in the house.
Okay.
There are many houses that have, I grew up in Flanders, and there are many houses in the Flanders development that had aluminum, that still have aluminum wire.
Okay. So how long should a home inspection take? Because when I've worked with you, it's taken somewhere between 3 to maybe 4 hours. But I've heard home inspections taken all day, 8 hours.
Well, it depends on the square footage of the house and the condition of the house. We've done small houses on Lake Apacong under 1,000 feet that take us 2 or 3 hours.
Okay.
Because of the number of things that we have to document and write up. But the average house, I mean, HomeTeam does a little bit differently, and that's a little plug for us, is we do it in a team approach. There's two home inspectors on every inspection, except if somebody's out sick or something like that. But normally it's a team approach. And then we bring a third person in to do the termite and the tank sweeps, who are that's all they do is termites.
Okay.
Because, we could do the termite inspection, but I tell you what, these guys are a lot better at spotting it than we are because they do it, and that's all they do.
Right. Okay.
So average house on us, a 2,500 square foot house, is 2.5, 3 hours. Sometimes quicker. I've done houses that were out in 90 minutes because the house was in really good shape and access to everything was there. Sometimes if the house is vacant, you can breeze through it pretty quickly if you're not walking around beds and not worried about breaking something.
Yeah.
I mean, because you got to be very respectful. We're in somebody else's house. You're digging through their closets. You're digging through their, and that's the other thing is the sellers. If you're a selling agent or you're selling your house, be prepared. We're going to go into these places. So, don't leave things that you don't want us to find because we're going to be in every nook and cranny of the house.
And that's their job.
Right. So if like the panels behind your closet, clear your or the hatch to the attic is in your closet. Move your clothes first because I don't want to open that hatch and have the dust fall down on your your evening gown.
Right.
Or your $300 suit. I really don't want to do that, but I can't take the time to cover everything.
Right. Of course. So as I mentioned, we've done a lot with Larry. You guys are in Bud Lake, no? We're
in Morris County. Yeah, I live in Bud Lake. That's where I live.
Okay.
But we cover all of North Jersey.
All of North Jersey.
Yeah, we're based out of there's other franchises. We have a franchise in Bergen. We have a franchise in down the shore, and we're down south. And we have a new one coming aboard in Essex. So we have other franchises, but I service this office, and I've done a number of inspections. I've even gone as far as Tom's River for an agent that I'm doing business with. Again, in life, you deal with people, and if sometimes it's a brother or a sister, and you really want to make sure you take care of them and do it right. And the biggest flattery I got is when an agent refers a family member because that means they trust us, and I think that's the big part of it is they have to trust we're going to do a fair inspection. And I don't like doing an inspection for an agent that rolls their eyes when I see something. I either see it or I don't.
Right.
And I'm going to write it up. It's going to, and I tell people my best tool, and I know it sounds corny, but it's a good agent because they can take the time to explain that when they get the report and say to the buyer, this is expected in a house. You're buying a 250-year-old house.
Oh yeah.
This is expected. Nobody's going to allow you out of this contract because there's a warped beam. There's a timber in the basement. Now, if the timber's falling down and the basement's going to fall, it's a different story.
Right.
But
well, that actually answered my next question of what do you expect from a real estate agent?
I want them to manage the inspection in a sense that I love the introductions. They're going to open the house for me. They're going to make sure the seller knows we're coming, especially with tenants. It can get awful difficult if they're not expecting us.
Yeah.
So to prep them, also if we're doing a sweep, to let them know that they should clear the driveway because we get there and all these stuffs. Then we do the sweep, and then there's all this big exceptions, and the people want us to come back, and then it costs more money to come back.
Okay.
So to having the property prepped for that is important. To make sure the seller knows that have the on the seller's side, the agent should know to have the people prep us for like the panel in the garage.
Yeah. They
can't have a whole garage full of stuff against it. We got to get in there. I mean, we've had sheds that are locked and we can't open the doors. I mean, so prep us for that. The other thing is radon. If you're going to do a radon test, the house should have closed house conditions 12 hours before we get there.
12 hours before.
12 hours before we get there. Otherwise, we have to leave it 4 days.
Okay.
If we get there and it's all closed up and we let set the test, we can pick it up in 48 hours.
Okay.
So that's important in this kind of heat because who wants to have the house closed up for 4 days in 98-degree heat?
But you can still run the air conditioner.
Well, the central air.
The central air.
The problem I'm having, like this week, I had 2 houses that didn't have central air. They had window air conditioners. They shouldn't run the window air conditioners.
Why not?
Because it introduces new air into the house and pressurizes the house. It can change the results of the test.
Okay.
So the problem comes is, are you going to trust these people when it's 105 out? Mm-hmm. I tell you what, I'm sleeping in my bedroom at night. It's 100 degrees. I'll turn that air conditioner on. So I tell people if the test comes out high, it's high because you can't fake high.
Right.
But if it comes out real low, you may want to test it again when you control the environment.
Okay. Or
you can talk to your lawyer and put money in escrow and do the test when you're moved in. But that gets a little hairy because then you're holding money after close and it gets ugly. But there are some cases where that's the only way to do it. But if it's not closed up, I mean, I've pulled up and all the windows are open and I'm like, now I got to leave the test till Monday instead of picking it up Friday.
Yeah.
And it delays your results too. Because then we got to pick it up later.
Yeah, which then delays the whole transaction, and it's it's a mess.
So being prepared. So the agent, I think, is that, and also they got to manage the family.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, I love a father coming with them, and tell you the truth, I think I'm a little different than most. I love the father of the bride or even the father of the son, because they own the house.
Yeah.
And they may see something I don't see.
Okay.
And I tell people, I'd rather you find it than us miss it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little annoying when he's pointing out stuff that we haven't even got to yet.
Okay.
Because then it can take us off our schedule. That's where the agent comes in and try to explain to the buyer. You can follow them around. You can ask them questions. It's their dime. I really want them to feel like it's their inspection. Mm-hmm. But they're better off holding it or watching. And then, if they have a question, ask it and then back. Because we're doing a prescribed inspection by a tablet.
Okay.
And you want us to keep on the tablet because then we don't miss anything.
Okay.
And then we do a summary. We do an intro in the beginning, and then we do a comprehensive summary at the end, and we go over everything we find, go right down the summary. We're writing the report as we go. So the document you see is already done in the can when we're done.
And you take a plethora of pictures.
And we take probably 300 pictures of a house, and we use about 30 or 40 that are strategic. And a lot of pictures are good pictures. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we want to show you the roof and say the roof's in great shape, I want you to see the roof.
Yeah.
The gutters or the chimney has a hair crack in it. I want you to see the hair crack.
Okay.
Because I want you to understand what it is, and also to say, okay, that's a little crack. I can fix that. If you're comfortable doing it, then you know what to do. You know what I mean? So I need the agent to. We're partners in it in a sense. Mm-hmm. I mean, not in conjunction, but we're partners in a sense to make sure that we do a good job.
Okay. So before we close out, I recently had a friend reach out to me to make a career change. Wants to go into home inspection.
Sure.
And you were the first guys that I referred him to. But what's the path to that? You mentioned earlier that there's obviously training and there's education, there's schools that you have to go through. But what's the path if someone who didn't have the conversation with my friend and I? What's their path?
Well, I would tell them to find an inspector that they could maybe spend a day with.
Okay.
Follow them around, shadow them, see if you like it. Because if you don't like what they do, you're better off cutting your losses and finding something else.
Okay.
That's what I did. I spent 2 days with the guy just following around, watching him do inspections before I decided that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
Once you decide you want to do that, there's several schools in New Jersey that are authorized by the state. Okay. And it's basically a 10 class or 10-week course. Mm-hmm. Some of them have rolling enrollment. That's
okay.
Rolling in enrollment, which is nice because if they're in class 5, you start at 5 and then you finish at 4.
Okay.
And you go right through like that. And then you go there and then you have to pass the national test.
Okay. Is there two separate tests?
Yeah, no, there's no state test. It's national. It's an NIH test, National Institute of Home Inspectors. It's an online test. And it's you hit that last button.
Yeah.
It says you passed or you didn't. So it's computerized and it's pretty comprehensive, but it's not rocket science. Okay. If you have an aptitude for this, it's really about recognizing things and knowing what to do. Okay. And you go through that, and then you have to do 10 inspections or 10 hours with inspectors as an apprentice. Okay. And then you apply for your license, and then the state gets your license. The state is a little slow sometimes getting your license, but then it requires insurance, insurance, which is expensive, and workman's comp if you're employing people. And then a set of tools. The tools are a big price when you start. There's probably $500 worth of tools that you need. Okay. Everything from moisture meters to telescoping poles or ladders. Okay. Because you got to be safe on the job. So it's a little encompassing to start out, but once you start out, then you go out there and you meet people, and you got to get your first inspection under your belt. Okay. It's a little worry sometimes because we try to be perfect. And everybody hates that call you get 6 months later and says, I had somebody the other day call me and say, my electrician, and I think they were looking for me to pay for it. And they say, my electrician says the box is up. I need to replace the box. And I said, well, did you read your report? And they said, yeah. I said, well, page 21 says the box is antiquated, out of date, and should be reviewed by a licensed electrician. And I didn't read that.
Yeah.
So, you got to read the report too. Because you know what it is people are excited.
Yeah.
They're emotional. They love the house. They want to get into it. They don't want you to tell them anything bad, but unfortunately, sometimes it's just a matter of letting them know. But we're not perfect either. That's one thing. It's not an insurance policy. Some people think it's a guarantee that nothing will go wrong in the house. I've had dishwashers leak the week after we inspect them, but we look at them and we run them, but we don't know if it can wash a dish.
Yeah. So, Larry McEntee, Team Inspection Services. Thank you so much for joining us.
If you Google us, we're in Northwest New Jersey. Put your zip code in, it will come up with the nearest home team. We are a large national firm with 180 of us.
Okay.
And we're the number one in the business, I think, at this point.
And like you said, where's your office?
My office is out of Bud Lake, but I mean, we're mobile. I mean, we're in the truck. I mean, really, the state makes us put our address down, but my address is my pickup truck. I mean, I'm in Little Falls tomorrow. I'm in, Weehawken. I'm all over the place.
Hey, he's all over North Jersey.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I am John Hodorovich with the Crawford Lorenzo.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Sorry. It's 973-945-3935. You'll get my cell phone. Leave a message. If I'm under inspection, I'll get right back to you. And if you leave the address, I'll call you back with if you need pricing or anything else, because I'll look up the house before I call you back.
Is there an email?
Email, you can send it to HomeTeam. Excuse me. I'm trying to think of my home. It's L McEntee. Use mine. LMCENTEE at HomeTeam.com.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I am John Hodorovich with the Crawford Lorenzo team here at Keller Williams Metropolitan. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.